evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Inside the Pigskin, the show everybody has been waiting for. That's for sure. Let me go over the topics real quick. Dan Marino versus Nathan Peterman. What gives? Oh my good, that ought to draw you in real quick. That's not good enough. We got Snoop Dogg's bowl game. We're going to talk about a couple quarterbacks in new places. Matthew Stafford, the trade revisited. Jim Harbaugh living in an RV, and the Pittsburgh Steelers and Cameron Sutton, and of course a little RIP to Kyrie Jackson. With that said, let me go to the crew real quick. And to my left is Smoking Jeremy B. Welcome back, Jeremy.
Good evening, Scott. Glad to be here. Let's talk some football.
Yeah, that's what we're doing. That's the plan. All right. And my red brother from another mother. Okay, Travis Holmes. Okay, we're both wearing sport and red. It's a good color tonight, right, Travis?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I appreciate you having me as always.
Oh, no problem. Hey, listen, you know what? Red is a good color, and this that, again, all the colors are good. But you just have two right next red boys here next to each other. All right, Mel Farr Jr. I'm going to hand the rock over to you. Welcome back.
Hey guys, how's it going?
All right, and last but not least, our favorite coach, Coach Bono. All right, let's get to business here because God only knows we got plenty of it, and I'm looking forward to an awful lot of response. And look at this here. We got Ralph Williams in the house. Dan Marino, by a long shot. You don't even know what we're talking about, but that's okay. But at least you could go out there and throw Cam Sutton. Steelers knew this was coming, probably. All right, but we're going to get to it. So with that said, let's start with why would I even bother to talk about Dan Marino versus Nathan Peterman? What gives? I'll tell you what gives. The strange but true category of Dan Marino and Nathan Peterman have rushed for the exact same number of yards, 87. Okay, that's Peterman in 15 career games. Well, Dan Marino, 87 and 242 career games played. But the thing they do have in common is they both played for the University of Pittsburgh Panthers. My goodness, Jeremy,
Come on.
that's the only, other than the fact that we know Dan Marino has the quickest release on the planet and his 60,000 yards careers to me, which I thought was an unbreakable record. He's fallen down the charts. Can you explain this, Jeremy? 87 is a wild number between two quarterbacks. So that to me are the difference between Rio de Janeiro and Iceland.
Okay, so Dan Marino was never that athletic guy with his legs. He was just a guy that did enough when it mattered. So if he did have to move out of the pocket, it was running towards the sidelines because he did not like to get hit. That he was smart about his body, which is why he played so many games. Nathan Peterman, on the other hand, was thought to be athletic and thought to be a good quarterback coming out of Pitt. But we all know that comparing Dan Marino to Nathan Peterman is like apples to. God, I can't even give you a good analogy in a fruit that would be less enough.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. Is prunes considered a fruit?
The pit. There
Oh
we go.
well, whatever. That's close enough.
Be the
All right,
fruit pit.
all right, that's good enough. Since we're both speechless on this, Travis has got that big old smile. So why don't you give us a little something to go with it?
Man, you think you slick, Scott. You put on a Duval County resident on this show and think I'm going to talk negatively about this young man, about this saint? No, 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 no. This man is the reason for the 2017 Jacksonville Jaguars historic season. That man let the Jaguars win 10-3 against his Buffalo Bills. That's the Miles Jack wasn't down season. No, 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 no. And he's from Duval County. Hey, man, Nate Peterman, you are the best. I got nothing bad to say about you, bro. Keep throwing them picks, keep cashing them checks. I don't care. Go ahead, bro.
Are you talking about that playoff game, the 10-3 game?
The 10-3 Buffalo Bills loss in Jacksonville back in the
What,
2017 2018 playoffs.
which, by the way, I attended thanks to Dan Edwards. Okay, I covered that game, or I called it covered that something.
Now
Okay,
that
so
young man from Jacksonville grew up in the Jacksonville area. I mean, what was St. John's area, and then allowed the home team a victory while he's getting paid by the other team. Hey man, I'm here for this. Come on, man. I would never disperse your name ever, Mr. Peterman. I might name my child my next child Nathan. Let's go.
boy, I never expected that response. I don't think anybody on this panel is going to even duplicate it anyways. But what do you? All right, Mel, where you stand on this 87-87 stat comparison?
I mean, you really keep comparing apples and oranges. I mean, Dan Marino wasn't that he wasn't athletic. Dan Marino was extremely athletic. He just wasn't a runner.
Right.
wasn't He wasn't a mobile quarterback. He had a right arm that he had a tremendous amount of confidence in, and he could see things and he could make throws that nobody else could make. So it wasn't that. It doesn't surprise me because I mean, you look at him when he got outside the pocket. I mean, he did not look very fluid. So he did what he was paid to do. He was paid to throw the football, not to run the football, and he changed the game. I mean, there's no question about it. He changed the way the game has been played now. Obviously, with the numbers that he put up, a lot of people thought nobody would ever catch him. But the game has changed once again to more like how he played the game, where it's a more wide open game, where they rely more on the quarterback to throw the football. But Dan Marino is. It doesn't surprise me because he was one of the obviously one of the most gifted passers of the football.
Yeah, I mean that's why it's a fun topic. Listen, we don't have to have every topic be serious or crying out loud. You talk about two quarterbacks so far apart and what their ability is, it's one thing. But yeah, I mean, I'm not picking on Peterman. I'm just looking at the fact that I know Dan Marino is the best pure pocket passer I've ever seen, and for no other reason his quick release and the fact that he had good wide receivers around him. But think about it, and Nathan Peterman, well, you know what? He made some money playing ball and he had a chance to have a lot of frequent flyer miles. If anybody that knows about frequent flyer miles, it's a demand of my Mr. Coach John Bono about frequent flyer miles. So,
well, it's great to be back, Scott. Thank you,
we're glad
Travis.
to have you back.
Travis, I just want to know, like, because I'm asking, I'm not quizzing. What high school did he go to?
What high school did he go to? Oh gosh. You want to give me a second? I don't remember off the top of my head.
I'm just curious.
I know it was Barton Trail. Barton Trail.
Barton Trail. Yeah.
Right. The Bears. Yep. All right. Well, all I'm thinking is it's got to be July, mid-July, because we got topics on here like, comparing two guys that rushed for 87 yards that played 3 decades apart. Agree with Mel. Marino played during a different era. He was the prototypical, what you would say, drop back quarterback. And, back then they didn't want the quarterback to run very much. Now it's, now we've got dual threat quarterbacks, and that's really the most dangerous type of quarterback that there is. When Lamar Jackson's having a great day, he's pretty hard to defend. I'll leave it at that.
Well, Coach, welcome to Production 101 summertime, because when it comes to guys like me and probably Jeremy and a few other people, we have to go deep.
Yeah, got to go deep. We're waiting. We're all waiting for training camp to start. Unless guys get in trouble. There's not a whole lot of news right now. Which we got that.
Yeah, but we can have fun. This is what I call fun news. All right, let's go to the chat room. Joshua Dora, what's going on, fellas? We are going on, fellas, okay? Sorry to be here. I know this crew isn't a fan of Josh and the guys aside from smoking. Hey, listen, we got nothing against you, Joshua Dora. I mean, you're a character like no other I have ever seen in my life. That's all. And now I like this comment. I used to see Dan Marino in his restaurant in Coral Springs back in the day. Guess what, Joshua? I ate at that restaurant, and I have to tell you, it was actually a pretty good restaurant. I used to go there a lot, so I had no problem against his restaurant. I enjoyed it. So Walter Mitchell, again, no link. Well, I don't know what happened there, but we're glad you're on. Pigskin. There we go. All right. We'll go to Candy with a station break. Go ahead.
If you see that red subscribe button underneath the 2 gentlemen in red, if you see it, that means you haven't subscribed to us. Please click it, like us, share us with all your friends, your followers. If you enjoy listening to podcasts, we are on all the places where you get your podcasts. We do Monday nights baseball, Tuesday nights football, Wednesday and Thursday nights. You just never know what sport we might be talking about. Anything from football to last week it was hot dog eating contest. You just never know. And everything in between. Cornhole, you never know. But one of the panelists on this group here wrote a book. Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders. It was written by Scott Morganroth. It is published by the South Florida Tribune Publishing Company. Go get it. Amazon, Kindle, Barnes & Noble, Apple and Google Books. It talks about how media has changed over the 40 plus years Scott has been in the business. And it has a picture of young Scott with Muhammad Ali. And I believe it has a picture of young Scott with Tommy Lasorda too. I could be wrong. Buy the book and find out. Wednesday night, Scott does a one-on-one interview show on nofilter.net where he interviews one person. You just never know who the next person's going to be. He's interviewed both Mel and Coach on this panel, so you never know who the next one is going to be. Tune in to find out. Go to our website, www.southfloridatribune.com, where you can find an online store where you can get all kinds of merchandise from South Florida Tribune and Motor City Madmouth, and you can see the writings of Scott and Jeremy and the pictures that I've taken. If you want to advertise or sponsor a show, call Scott 954-304-4941. If you missed anything, you can either hit rewind and watch it over again, or you can back it up, but it's scrolling at the bottom of the ticker all show long. Back to you, Scott.
All right, well, let's go ahead and go bring Joshua Door. One bad about Dan Marino's run. No, it really wasn't. About 20 years ago was right, Josh. How about pocket ball? I'll tell you what, Joshua, you got any topics on pocket ball, send me a text. Well, I didn't know Scott wrote a book. Now, I know he's kidding around with that one. Candy's pictures are fabulous. Matt Henry, welcome to the big show. Good evening, fellas. All right. With that said, we're going to bring a animal in here, but this one a different kind of animal called Snoop Dogg. It's a bowl game that will become the first top to pay players after offer NIL deals to all players on both teams from the MAC and the Mountain West Conference. So with that said, Jeremy, what's your take on Snoop Dogg?
Well, seeing how this is the first I heard about it, I really don't have much of an opinion, but anything Snoop Dogg gets involved with usually does pretty well. So I have the feeling this is going to be pretty popular. He has a big following, and I think it's going to be bigger than we can expect.
That's all right. Save your voice, so the other Michigan topics are on the way anyway. So, all right, we'll turn it over to Travis Holmes.
I mean, this is weird because it's not really new. It's new, but it's not new. It's an old thing with the new stamps slapped on it, right? Because we're saying that Snoop and this bowl game is going to provide NIL dollars to players on both teams, and that's cool. We don't know what the number is. I mean, that part's still not out there.
Right.
But how is that so significantly different than all these bags, of swag that the kids have been getting at every bowl game going back however long? Like, I mean, this jersey here, that's from the Hawaii Bowl back in 2006. We got hundreds of dollars in swag, but I mean, it was like PlayStations. It was a $400 Amazon gift card. I mean, the ring itself cost, I don't know, $1,000. Like, what are we talking about? Like, that's money. These are items that are worth money. They're just not giving you the check. That's the main difference here. At the end of the day, if the check goes to the kids and the money goes to them, cool. But it's the same. That's a positive outcome. But I'm hoping that they're not taking that from the other stuff that comes along with the game. Again, these festivities, again, those prizes, all those things, and helps with those memories later in life.
Sounds good. All right, Mel, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm with Travis. I think they're just coining it a different way. They're just, as opposed to saying swag, your swag bag. I think they're just going to coin it as NIL now, but it's probably still going to be the same stuff. They might give them some per diem maybe or something like that. It might give them a little, something in the form of a check, but it's not going to be outside of what they've normally been getting, because like Travis said, when you went to the bowl games, that was a big deal. The sweatsuits you're going to get, the gym shoes, the sneakers, the hats, the jackets, all the shirts, all that stuff was a big deal. So I mean, all that stuff does have a value. I just think they're just coining it differently now, as opposed to saying swag gear. It's just going to be NIL. But what's funny to me is, Snoop, Ice Cube. I mean, how they've been able to change their image. I mean, these guys were public enemy number one back in my day. But now, Snoop obviously he's got. I mean, excuse me, Ice Cube's got. He's loved. He's done quite a few movies. He's and then Snoop, of course, him and Martha Stewart got Snoop Loops. I mean, that's the farthest. I mean, who could imagine back 30 years ago that Snoop would be doing the things that he's doing? So it's just funny to me how, times have changed and how these both of these guys who are Public Enemy #1, have become endearing individuals to pretty much, basically mainstream America.
Okay, fair enough, Coach.
Well, I think it's interesting that it's the Mountain West and the Mid-American Conference. So I know that I don't know where the Mountain West ranks, but I know that the MAC firsthand is probably at the bottom of the food chain when it comes to NIL money. So I know that those players and whatever MAC team, because when you're at a MAC, you throw quarters around like they're manhole covers. I mean, you have to literally, every decision you make, you have to consider what the cost is. And so I'm glad that those kids that are playing in that game will have a chance to get a little bit of action there.
Yeah, you know what, Coach, I'm with you on that. Mountain West Mac's a good fit. The only thing I'll say about NIL, I mean, I admire what Snoop Dogg is doing. He's kind of going to the little guy in this situation. To me, you know what, NIL reminds me of artificial intelligence. I need to learn a lot more about it until I can fully comment on it. So, there's still a lot more unknowns with it. How can I compare NIL artificial intelligence? Well, I just did. So, but again, it's still intriguing anyways that he's doing this, and that indeed, Coach, those two conferences are the ones that figure to be the beneficiary of it.
That's an interesting point by Coach. Again, talking about the fact that the smaller conferences are going to be the ones to bring in these more interesting bowl options. Like, again, this is a gin and juice. This is produced. That's what they're saying. This is actually being produced or presented by the Gin and Juice brand. What? Like, if you want an all-season subject, that's it, man. The Gin and Juice Bowl. That's
what they're going to get, all the gin and juice.
Is that going to be the theme song played at halftime?
I mean, the parents in that stadium are going to be feeling real good. Let's say that.
Interesting. I'll tell you one thing, though. I have to tell you, I heard on Chicks and Salsa a little bit of an alcohol reference, if I heard correct. And you know what? Here's what I'm going to say about this. And Candy, you can come out for just a moment here because this is really funny.
My mind on my money and my money on my money.
Oh, I'm telling you. I went out and had two of the best strawberry margaritas on the planet. Okay. But here's the thing. That tequila wasn't strong enough and didn't knock me out. So what do you think happens? How everybody has a certain reaction to alcohol? After I had this stuff, I was preparing for Monday's show, and it didn't have any effect on me. So Candy sends Vera over at BlackRock a text that, you know what you made him wasn't strong enough. She said, I'm going to have to lay it out with tequila for the next one because you can't knock me out with all that alcohol, with all this energy that I have inside of me preparing for Monday's show.
Wait a minute. Let's set the record straight. You had already had how much caffeine in your system? And on top of it all, before anybody says anything, I was the designated driver when he was drinking, so there was none of that involved. But yes, you had how much caffeine in your system before you even had those?
Wasn't that iced tea? I thought, or I don't remember what it was.
You had a 2-liter bottle of Diet Mountain Dew before we even went.
It was gin and juice.
Well, that gin and juice looked like. Let me tell you, that gin and juice looked like purified water when I got through with it that night. Let me tell you, and only in the summer, folks, that we come up with stuff like this. But I rest assured, the next few weeks we'll be changing the tone. But what the heck, gin and juice, pure water, it's all the time. Don't worry. You know what the end result is? Vera, okay, she said I'm going to have to put more tequila in it. We'll see what it does. All right, there you go. So there's my alcohol story for the night. All right, so let's talk about some real football. And James Burgess is in the house. Guess we know what the celebratory after the game drink will be. You know it. Great minds think alike, James. That's it. All right, so now we're going to go on to a couple of quarterbacks and new places. How will they do? Joshua Dobbs goes to the 49ers. Tyrod Taylor to the Jets. And you know what? Back to Jeremy out to my left.
Well, Joshua Dobbs, the astronaut, he'll be able to focus on any studies he hasn't finished up yet because Brock Purdy has been pretty sturdy in that 49ers roster, and he hasn't missed but any game since his rookie year. So I doubt he gets to play.
Okay.
The astronaut will get to study the playbook and study any classes he wants to take to further on his master's degree.
Yeah, can't short change Josh Dobbs on his intelligence, that's for sure. Travis?
Yeah, I mean, to smoking Jeremy B's point, you're probably not going to see much of Joshua Dobbs. I mean, but obviously, if Purdy gets hurt, I mean, he's fine. But for the most part, the likelihood is that you're just not going to see him. So if you're not seeing him, then if we're really having a conversation of how they're going to do, they ain't gonna do nothing. But as far as Josh Dobbs is concerned, but if we're talking about Tyrod Taylor, that is interesting at least. I mean, you got Aaron Rodgers, the politician or whatever you want to call him these days. You never know with Aaron. Like, hey man, that man just might want to take a week off and go to an ayahuasca camp. Like, I don't know. Or he just may be injured at one point or another. The fact that he's coming back from a very major injury with an experimental process that was very quick. Like, I mean, all the above, you could see some moderate time from Tyrod Taylor. So from that perspective, yeah, he has a very solid team around him, and he's not a bad quarterback. He's just not this incredible one. Yeah.
Right.
So Tyrod, you're in a good situation. Take advantage of it on the off chance that Rodgers is not able to play a few games, and Josh Dobbs, hey man, keep collecting them checks.
All right. And Jeremy, you didn't talk about Tyrod. So
I forgot to talk about Tyrod Taylor. He's actually in a great situation because look at last year. Rodgers only lasted 4 snaps. If he lasts 3 times that much, he'll be in by the second quarter.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. I'm not going to counter with that one, that's for sure. So, okay, but Jane Burgess says he'll be the best backup option the Jets have had in a while. That's true, no doubt debating that. All right, Mel, we'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, I think the best case scenario for both of these guys is that you never hear their names.
Right. That's true.
Because if you do, something went sideways, and I know the New York Jet fans certainly don't want to see Tyrod Taylor out there. That's the last person they want to see. And the 49ers think they're building something special. They only have a few years left. Maybe this might be the last year left that they have Brock Purdy on the cheap before they have to make a decision. So if somebody else is out there taking snaps, they're not going to be very happy. So best thing that can happen for the fan base, maybe not for these two individuals, but for the fan base, is that you don't even know they're on your roster.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, all right, Coach.
Well, as far as Josh Dobbs, I like the fit. I like any intelligent quarterback playing for Kyle Shanahan and his system. I think Kyle does a great job of, designing the plays around the running game, and and putting the quarterback in a position to succeed. So if he does have to play, I could see Dobbs being very serviceable there, and maybe better than serviceable. Again, he's a very intelligent guy, and he's got a good skill set. And I've been a Tyrod Taylor fan. I like him. Again, the best thing for the Jets is he can play, that Aaron has is able to start and finish the season. But Tyrod Taylor, before he got hurt with the Giants, put together some decent games, made some incredible throws, like some truly amazing throws. And I just like the guy. He's had that, he's had that bad luck of getting injured at in the wrong place at the wrong time. But I think it's 2 good acquisitions for both of those teams. I think they give them gives both of those teams quality guys that have played, have shown that they can compete at a high level, and will give them a chance to win.
Yeah.
It's not a situation where the season's over if one of those guys has to go in or come in off the bench.
Yeah, Joshua Dobbs is arguably on one of the best teams he's ever been on. So that's one thing. But the other thing is, too, that you also have, if you have to rely on Tyrod Taylor Rodgers out for an extended period of time. Makes you kind of wonder a little bit how long Rodgers would be around in the event of any difficulties for sure. So that's why I wanted to talk about these two for sure. And I think but they're both interesting comparisons nonetheless. But yeah, I do expect that Joshua Dobbs won't be playing as much, where on the other hand, Tyrod Taylor's fair game. All right. We're going to talk about Matthew Stafford, the trade revisited. And of course, Bo will have an opportunity to address it next week when he returns. But we're going to start it off with Travis this time. The Rams get Matthew Stafford. The Lions get Jared Goff, Jameson Williams, Fatu Melifonov. And let me tell you, Williams is obviously 2022, number 12 overall. Malinoff is 2021, 101st overall. So, and then you have Josh Pascal, 2022, number 46 overall. Jahmyr Gibbs, 2023, number 12 overall. We know how that turned out. Sam Laporta, 2023, number 34 overall. And Broderick Martin, 2023, number 96 overall. We're going to start off in a different order this time. We're going to let Travis talk about it first.
I mean, at the end of the day, I think everybody kind of won. I mean, we know the Rams were in that all-in situation at the time where they were simply, "Hey, man, I'm buying a championship. We're selling the future. We're selling the draft picks. We're selling all the free agent money and using void years and everything else like down the line. We're all in on this upcoming, 3 to 4 year time frame, where if we don't win a championship, no one's going to be here to pay the bill anyways." And they ended up getting a championship out of it. Actually, did they get 2 championships in that time frame? I believe
One.
Oh no, they got the one 2019. It was the year before that. So yeah, they got the one championship out of it, and then he's also able to help them rebuild because he's still playing at a pretty high level. Matthew Stafford, that is. And I mean, he probably is going to get a new contract, not this year, then over this next season. And the same kind of can go for Jared Goff. He became a new man in Detroit, playing at a much higher level. And the fact of the matter is, the Lions were able to kind of flip that and just make it into almost like a Cleveland Browns-esque trade. Not as bad as that trade, but I mean, with the resources they were able to use to kind of revamp that entire roster. That was it was a pretty incredible job. Like, again, they hit on the picks and revamped that whole roster with a lot of young players. I mean, again, you're talking Sam Laporta, Gibbs, Jameson Williams. I mean, he's fine again, but the fact of the matter is, it's a cheap roster with some solid, nice base hits and a few home runs. Hey, man, you can't go wrong with it. I think it's a win-win. They got what they wanted in the meantime. You get what you want long-term.
All right, let's go back to the chat room real quick. Coach Bono's next. Hi, JB and everyone. Hi, Smoking Dad. There you go. All right. Well, Walter Mitchell, remember the Rams tried to come off of Stafford, so a new deal is not necessarily a lock. And let's go back to Walter's initial comment. Both teams won the trade. If you're a Lions, the trade was an impetus for the genius of the resurgence. That's a great way of putting it. And as a Lions fan who will always be thankful for the 12 years Matt worked his off, the Lions got what they desperately needed. Matt got his ring. Goff got his reboot away from the LA blame game. Well, geez, old Pete James, you've given my guys a lot of ammo to build on. So, all right, Coach, take it from there.
I think James nailed it. I think he really did. I think, when you look at this, on paper, the Lions got the better part of the deal, right? But the fact of the matter is, as in the famous words of Jerry Glanville, NFL stands for not for long, right? So the Rams got a Super Bowl out of it, and that's the ultimate prize. That's the ultimate goal, and that alone makes it worth it. I've had the unique, privilege of having been with both of those guys. I was with Matt in Detroit and with Jared for a season in LA. For as much as they're similar, they're very different guys, and I'll go on record. I'm a Lions guy all the way, but I'm also a big Matt Stafford fan. I love Matt Stafford, everything about him, again, I've had the opportunity to be around him a lot longer, 3 years versus 1 year. But it's a win-win, but I still have to say that the Rams right now are ahead because they've got a Super Bowl and the Lions have yet to get there.
That's a good assessment. All right. Mel?
Yeah, I mean, I think they both won in this deal. Obviously, the Rams got their Super Bowl. The Detroit was kind of in a rebuilding mode, and they were able to take that asset and get a lot of assets back in return, a lot of draft capital back in return for Matthew Stafford. And they've been building their team, and they've drafted wisely. They've done very well with the picks that they received from the Rams for that trade. And, I think in the long run, I think, the Lions are going to benefit from it. I think, this is going to be a big year for them, obviously. Last year, they got all the way to the championship game. Looked like, I had my bags packed. Looked like we were going to Las Vegas. And then all of a sudden, some other team showed up in the second half. I don't know who that was that came out in the second half. But I think that, we'll see this year. I mean, I think both teams won. I mean, I think both teams did well in it. Initially, it looked very lopsided, but Jared Goff has done a great job. Resurrected his career. He just needed somebody to believe in him. He's got the right kind of people around him. They don't ask him to do more than what he's capable of doing. And I think that the fans are ecstatic. I mean, they're basically like Matt Who. I mean, they love Jared Goff, what he's doing and what he's bringing to the city. Matt didn't get him that far in the playoffs. Circumstance, personnel, whatever the case may be, playoffs and they weren't getting in. And when they weren't getting deep. Jared is taking them deep in the playoffs, and I think it's going to be very exciting to see what happens this year.
All right, Jeremy.
Well, yes, both teams have won the trade. Nobody's ahead or behind, really. In the short term, LA got their Super Bowl. Granted, they had to add pieces middle of that season in order to make it happen, because otherwise injuries and some decision making was going to make it not happen. Because they were real close to losing the division to San Francisco that year. If you remember right, San Francisco was up and coming and battling with them and actually beat them both times. So there was a lot going on, and they had to add Von Miller, Leonard Floyd, and OBJ midseason to get to that Super Bowl. And adding OBJ, nobody realized how important that was going to be until 2 weeks later when Robert Woods had his ACL. So that was the biggest boom to that offense, because they were not going to have their number 2 wide receiver, who was having one heck of a season. Now you fast forward and you look at everything that trade did to rebuild Detroit, with the way they moved the pieces around and got so many picks out of it. It's a win-win. There is no loser here. Detroit made it further into the playoffs after 32 years than they've ever made it before. Now, granted, it's being the penultimate in your own conference and not getting to the Super Bowl.
All right.
I think they can.
All right, here's what I think, and I was glad to listen to every one of you. If the Rams don't win a Super Bowl, which they did with Matthew Stafford, you know what this trade reminded me of? Reminded me of the Cowboys and the Vikings trade when Herschel Walker got dealt for a boatload of players that turned out. But the Vikings did not win the Super Bowl, so therefore the Rams negated that and did win it. But think of the haul for Herschel Walker. It was a huge, huge haul. But Jimmy Johnson fleeced the Minnesota Vikings. I have never seen a guy fleece another organization, let alone in the NFL. But everybody makes a good point. It is a win-win trade for both. And the one thing we have to realize is that we all know that Brad Holmes is the biggest genius on the planet anyhow. And, of course, it doesn't hurt that his coach is a great coach to work with, and ownership willing to do whatever he wants. I appeared on a show earlier today, I believe the Sports Scope it was, with Robert Butler, and he asked me about the Lions. And I said, the one guy who doesn't get the credit behind the scenes that he should get is Chris Spielman. And I say that Chris Spielman is the one guy that went out there, to me, shaped the culture until he brought in the right people. So I believe Chris Spielman should get a lot of credit for the Lions culture, and then Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell and Sheila Hamp and the rest of them have done a great job bringing this team to where it was. But yeah, Jared Goff, I mean, think about it, you talk about a passionate fan base. How many fan bases go out there and chant Jared Goff's name? Why do you think he wanted to stay there, for crying out loud? Jared Goff reminds me of Patrick Kane. When you go to Detroit, you don't want to leave there because there's so much passion there. It's what there really is amongst these players, and what that sports sound does for their fan base. So all the way around, you guys are all right. It's a win-win trade all the way. And thanks, Walter Mitchell. Yeah, but Chris Spielman's name doesn't get brought up enough, and I want to make sure we brought it up in a special shout out to Robert Butler having me on the show, because that got my wheels turning on this whole thing. All right, we're going to stay in the Michigan area just a little, or kind of sort of anyways. Jim Harbaugh has been living in an RV since moving to LA. Hey, you know what? It beats renting an apartment with some adventure added to it. So you know what? I'm going to go back to Travis Holmes. What do you think of Walker's temporary arrangement? I mean, Harbaugh's temporary arrangement.
I mean, this is absolutely a move of genius. I don't even know this man's living a bachelor's life in California. I looked at the inside of the video that the Chargers posted of the inside of this RV. It's just a basic RV. Hey man, it's just like a bachelor. He's there by himself. His wife, he's not there with his wife. He's just going and coming to work. He's in California, not spending those California prices to live there. And he's standing in the RV camp where he said it was like $80 per day. And I'm like, all right, cool. $80 per day. You're making God knows how much on your contract, being a recently hired head coach in California, and you're not spending, rent. You're not renting an apartment. You're not buying a house out there. Hey man, that's baller move. That's an old man like baller move, like that your daddy would tell you to save some money. Like he is out there living his best life in solitude and just out there to work, out there to grind. I got no problem with that, man. A great decision, and I bet he's living it up.
Okay, well, let's go back to James Burgess' comment. I like this one. That Walker trade built the mid-90s Cowboys in a lot of ways, but you have to, LA-Detroit trade is a win-win. LA got their ring. Detroit got the raw capital that they needed to play in this old house NFL style. Excellent point, James. All right, Coach Bono.
Well, Greg Roman, his offensive coordinator, is his next door neighbor in the trailer park. So,
is it really? No kidding.
They're both in there, and it doesn't. Knowing Jim, it doesn't surprise me one bit. I think it's a good move. Man, if you've lived in California, you've gone out there recently and look at what the prices are, and the sales tax, income tax, everything. It's it's the most important, most expensive place to live in the country. I don't know how the average person does it. We were there for 2 years, and if you're making good money, really good money, it's still a struggle. So good for Jim. Again, it kind of suits his personality. He doesn't need a lot of fluff and frills. He just needs a place to rest his head at night, and he's a guy that's going to be all about ball, 24/7, 365. So,
okay, all right, Mel.
Yeah, if I were to take a stab at it, I would think that there's probably a logical reason outside of what everybody is thinking, but I think Coach kind of hit on it a little bit. I don't know what the law is as far as residency is concerned. What is considered residency? If you're living there X amount of months out of the year in an RV, is that considered residency? So is that how is that going to affect your income tax? Because obviously we know that they have one of the highest income tax in the country, and so if you're not claiming residency there, then maybe he can circumvent some of those taxes, and maybe he's just paying. You can continue to pay Michigan taxes because he's still has his primary residence in Michigan. I think there's a lot more to do with it than just him being an eccentric kind of guy, even though we know he is that way. Right. And he's all about business, and he wants to go in there and just work. He doesn't want to. But Coach brings up a great point. I mean, it's not that he would have to worry about it, but it would cost a big chunk of change to buy a home out there.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Hey, Scott, can I just mention one thing to play off of what Mel's talking about? You know,
Absolutely.
when Gruden signed his contract with the Raiders, they were still in Oakland, but they knew they were going to be moving to Vegas. His contract was backloaded, you know, so
Really?
he got
Okay.
the bulk of his money after they made the move to Vegas, because no state income tax in Vegas, right? Or
That's
a
true.
lot, you know, so there could very well be some loophole that we're not thinking of that you know, Jim Harbaugh and his team of attorneys and accountants have discovered that we don't know about.
Oh, it's okay. All right, let's go to Candy Evelyn's comments, and then we'll go with you, Jeremy, in a moment. All right, this comical and relatable excursion. Put that up, Candy, and then you can put the rest of them up while you're at it. All right, go ahead, Jeremy, and read them.
This comical and relatable excursion just points to the chemistry exuberating from the Chargers organization. However, the RV content will end soon as the rest of Harbaugh's family joins him in Las Vegas.
All right.
Um, Jim Harbaugh does it his way. It usually works. It doesn't always make sense to me, but I've also never won a national championship or been to a Super Bowl, which is a very good point by James.
All right, keep it going, Jeremy. My voice is starting to take a beating.
Walter Mitchell says it was just what he wanted. He said as much when he took the job. Plus, he has small kids that were still in school here in Michigan. And that's the other thing. Uh, his family didn't want to move. That's why they haven't left yet.
Right.
Okay, well, that's fine. Keep it going, Candy.
As Chargers head coach, Jim Harbaugh resides near the beach in an RV. Yes, you read that correctly.
Right.
Harbaugh lives in a Quantum Thor motor coach, which oddly sounds like it belongs in an Avengers movie. Although Harbaugh may be seen as a superhero in the football world, his current mobile residence is just part of doing Harbaugh things.
That's true. Keep it going, Candy. You got a couple more.
I still say that Troy Aikman has the worst passing stats of any QB in the Hall of Fame. Joe Willie Navis gives him a run for his money. But anyways,
All right.
the house been up for sale here in Michigan. They had a yard sale at his estate.
Okay, fair enough. Well, let me just tell you this, Jeremy. Now you can pick up where we are with the RV thing with Jim.
With the RV thing with Jim, it is him being him. He's a down to earth guy. He likes to see things. He likes to be able to do things different. But at the same time, if his family is still here and they're here through September, he doesn't have to pay California taxes on year one of the income because he can use his house as residence.
Okay.
So
Fair enough.
that is probably a big part of it because he had a big bonus in there.
All right. The only two things I'm going to say about the subject is, why do you think Klay Thompson goes from California to play for the Dallas Mavericks? Well, you don't want to pay no state income tax either, right? Think about it. That's item number one. And Jim Hart, I think when the Chargers moved to LA has been interesting. You know, they play in a soccer stadium for a few years until they ultimately moved in. So the Chargers stay in California, Southern California, has been interesting to say none the least. And hey, you know what? I've seen Hart coach a few times at U of M. And you know what? Here's a guy that wears khaki pants. He doesn't care. All he does is win. You know, and what else can you say? I think it's all well and good. And the Chargers, to think that they'd even bring a high-profile guy like Harbaugh to begin with, is an interesting step. But with all this talking right now, I guess the biggest thing is how the Chargers are going to do in year number one of the Harbaugh era. With that said, let's go back to the chat room a little bit. Getting really interesting, boy, is it ever. Okay, let's start off with Kenny.
If you don't want to leave Michigan, you must live in a very nice neighborhood. Well, you know, coaches make a lot of money in college, is all I'll add to that. So, yes, he probably does there in Ann Arbor. Harbaugh was king here, but and he goes, Troy had Emmett, though. And yes, you're absolutely right. But Harbaugh and his family was allowed to be, they could go shopping in normal places and not get bothered.
Okay.
And his family, a.k.a. his parents, live next door, so they more than likely will relocate as well when time to do so. His parents never left Michigan.
Well, don't worry, you could get lost in LA really quick, don't we all know, for all of us that have been there. All right, let's go. Let's go on to the Steelers. They have another topic and then another unfortunate tragic incident we have to get to. Pittsburgh Steelers cornerback Cameron Sutton was suspended without pay for the first 8 games of the 2024 season for violating the NFL's personal conduct policy. The league announced Monday he's eligible on October 29th, the Steelers bye week. The team visits Washington in Week 10. Domestic battery to me is we're talking by actual strangulation. So you know what? This stinks that we have to continue to talk about these things. But you know what, Jeremy? You're the one who can lead off on this one.
Well, everybody can say what they want, but if you remember right, because I discussed this with you when it happened on June 1st, the Lions got Cam Sutton's contract voided by the NFL, which is why their cap room jumped up by that $12.5 million. And then after they did a little research, they added in another $2.1 million in dead cap to make it a $4.2 million dead cap, which is how they ended up at the 34.5 they're at now.
Mm-hmm.
But the NFL agreed that it was a dismissible and avoidable contract offense. Now, Cam Sutton is still trying to sue civilly the Lions to get his guaranteed money for this season, because it was actually due payment at the same day that the warrant was publicly issued across media.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to make it, because since the NFL agreed and they're the governing body of the NFL and they govern all the contracts, I think that's not going to bode well for him civilly.
Okay, fair enough.
But everybody's saying, "Oh, we might get some more money back." It doesn't work that way. His guaranteed check was ripped up and canceled the day the warrant was issued. They made that publicly known 3 hours prior to dismissing him.
Fair enough. All right, Travis, take it from there.
So we've seen a lot of these quirky examples, and they're all quirky, they're all bumpy, they're all discombobulated, because a lot of the time it does feel like the NFL is making up these rules as they go along with this disciplinary, actions on players who may have pending investigations or pending legal situations or whatever you want to call it. So we've seen a lot of these. We've also seen players sue the league, or the NFLPA sue the league later, and then they end up getting the money on the back end, and it just doesn't get as highly reported. So because of all of that, that makes this just a really odd, really curious situation. So the league finally said, all right, cool, he's suspended for 8 games, and that's going to cost him an additional $500,000 on top of basically the 10.5 it was already going to cost him when the Lions got rid of him. So far, this situation has at least cost them $11 million. Knock on wood, we'll see how this whole process works out. We may be 2 years down the line, and they find out they settled out of court, and he got half of the money or whatever it may be, and nobody will care at that point. But it's still an unfortunate. It's a terrible situation overall across the board. People being messy people, and the Steelers, they obviously were aware of it, so they took the risk for, again, $500,000. They get a player for half a season and just take the PR hit, basically.
Okay, Coach.
It's an unfortunate situation all the way around. Again, look, domestic violence is a major problem in society. It has been for quite some time. The NFL, any professional sports league is nothing more than a cross section of society. So it's, you'd be foolish to think that something that happens in society isn't going to happen in, a league like the NFL. So it's unfortunate because he's a high profile player, celebrity, this is going to end up costing him, as like Travis said, it's going to cost him a lot more than it would the average person. And it's just you just wish that these things would not happen. Right. Not to players, to anybody. To anybody. It's just there's no way to spin this where it's a positive thing. It's ugly, it's bad, it's sad, and you know, hopefully we'll make strides and you know, hopefully somebody will learn something from this that, you know, maybe prevent someone else from making the same mistake.
Good point, Mel.
Yeah, I mean, this is a topic that really doesn't warrant further discussion, to be honest with you, in my opinion. I mean, you do the crime, man, you got to do the time. That's it. In the story, it is what it is. I mean, that's the punishment. You know, going in that there's going to be some consequences for poor behavior. That nobody rewards bad behavior. The NFL is no different. It's something that was wrong, and now he's being, you know, now he has to deal with those consequences.
Well, I'll just say this: domestic battery by strangulation speaks for itself. You know what, Cam? I'll say to summarize the whole thing: you made your bed, you're going to sleep in it. I'll be hard pressed to see if you're on a roster in 25. That's all I'll say about it. All right, let's go back to the chat room. James Burgess, I think the Chargers might tread water this year. Harbaugh will send guys away who don't buy in. All right, keep them going. I'm going to just read them that way. Candy went too fast on that one. All right, first one. So go back up, not back up. I think the Chargers might tread water. All right, we don't read. Harbaugh will send guys away who don't buy in. Long run, I believe LA Chargers is going to be KC's first challenger. Good point, James. I like that. Okay, Kenny, Steelers could have used them all year. That schedule is a slobber knocker. Never heard that term before. Okay, and then Walter Mitchell, never a good look, especially when you run away from the place for multiple weeks. And then James Burgess +1 Mel. All right, good stuff. Got it all up there. As I said before, Cam, you made your bed. You're going to sleep in it. I'd be hard to press to think that you'll be on a roster in 2025. All right, so, you know, in journalism, we all know it, that there's certain things we have to get to, some we don't like, but nevertheless, that's part of the business. Rest in peace, Minnesota Vikings rookie cornerback Tyree Jackson and two of his former high school teammates were killed in an early morning car crash Saturday in Maryland. Jackson was 24. The three were in the same vehicle just after 3 a.m. when it was struck by another vehicle changing lanes. Police said he was a fourth-round pick by the Vikings, played 2 years at Alabama before finishing his college career with one season at Oregon. He was in the running. They actually had earned a starting cornerback job. It's a tough blow for Vikings coach Kevin O'Connell. Boy, you hate to see this stuff. The thing that really bothers me about this whole thing was it was after 3 a.m. Okay, that's the thing. You know, again, you hate to see anything, but we know a lot of things don't happen well from 12 until 6. Now, Jeremy, why don't you give us some more information as you found out as you were on Chicks and Salsa earlier, and then we can respond accordingly.
Well, the two teammates was Isaiah Hazel, who was 23. He was an underclassman, and Anthony Litton Jr., 24. One was going to be a UDFA for the San Francisco 49ers, as I understood. So the other one, you know, he played for UNC, and I believe that was Isaiah Hazel, the 23-year-old, was playing for UNC Greensboro. So these guys all got together, and it's during these couple of weeks these rookies get their days off in between camps, from OTAs to training camp. And I'm not going to knock somebody for going out and having a good time in their off time. But I am going to say these rookies may need to start having that speech that Chris Carter used to give about nothing good happens after midnight, so make sure you're home before then. And I'm not blaming the kids because they did the right thing. Isaiah Hazel was 100% sober and the designated driver for the other two. They were doing everything right. The person that needed an Uber driver or a designated driver was Corey Klingman, the woman that was driving the Infiniti Q50 that swerved over into the passenger side of the expressway, ran them off the road, and then swerved and hit another one on the left side into the medium, which is a Chevrolet Impala. The gentleman in the Impala lived. The two people in the Infiniti Q50 lived, and all three in that maroon Dodge Charger careened off the road and went into a bunch of stumps that were on the side of the road that had just been cleared, and that's where the car finally came to rest. Hazel and Jackson was in the front seat. Both of them was proclaimed dead on arrival of the emergency personnel. Litton survived and made it back to the hospital, but did not survive his treatments and died a few hours later at the emergency room of the University of Maryland Medical Center. It's a horrible story. 3 families lost their kids.
Right.
3 different team bases lost their teammates, their loved ones, their friends, guys that they look at like family. The Vikings, Oregon, and Alabama, for one. And now University of North Carolina, Greensboro with Isaiah Hazel. It's an awful look, but it all goes back to the things that they used to be preached upon at the rookie symposium, and I don't think there's guys saying that anymore like they used to. I think Chris Carter, his last one was, 2017 or 18, I believe it was. So it's been 6 years since they've heard that statement, and I don't think the new people say it enough.
I agree. All right, well, all right, Travis, pick it up.
Well, all 3 went to high school together in Maryland. They all 3 went to Wise High School. And they obviously were waiting on training camp to start and, hanging out as, future millionaires would do in the off season. Coming back from, again, they did everything right. Like I would love to say, to Jeremy's original point, hey man, get inside before 3 a.m. I mean, that's exactly what my mom would always tell me when I'm in college. Like, right. But at the same time, did I always listen? Nah, because I'm a dumb kid. Because I can't even say because I'm a dumb kid, because I could still be doing everything right. I'm just a kid. And that's a part of living life, is living life. And some of living life is going to a club or going to a party or going to a friend's house and just leaving the house at 3 a.m. because we were just having a blast, man, and nobody really wanted to go home. And I love these people, like whatever it may be. So I would never want to go too far and just say, hey, man, just go be in the house. But at the same time, I do fully understand it. But it's a terrible situation. It's an unfortunate situation, and it stinks. And I hate to be that guy, but it's always in these situations. The person that survives is always the one that probably shouldn't have. And that's a weird way of saying it, but you hear so many of these stories. This hits home for me because one of my best friends, his sister got hit by a drunk driver 16 years ago. And it was the same situation. The only people that end up dying is the car that gets impacted, and the drunk driver somehow always lives. And it drives me nuts because I don't know how to solve that. And I know that's not the purpose of this whole call. That's not the purpose of this conversation. But it's a really unfortunate situation. And again, shout out Jeremy. Shout out to the comments for actually saying Isaiah Hazel and saying Anthony Linton, because they are people who are lost in this also. And I'm only hearing about Kyrie. And again, he's an important football player. Yes, I fully understand it. But 3 people died, and it's equally unfortunate whether or not they were the high, draft pick.
All right, we're smoking. Jeremy, V, Travis, well said. All right, we'll turn it over to Coach Bono.
Man, I don't know. There's too much more that I can add to what Travis said. It's obviously a tragedy. When I got the notes today, and I was looking over the questions, with the combination of this topic and the last one that we just discussed, I really started to reflect back onto something that Coach Caldwell used to preach to the team all the time. Something that I adopted, when I was a head coach, preached to my teams all the time, and something that I know that he got from Tony Dungy. And it was that, there's a high cost for low living. There's six things that will lead to trouble, and they could be independently, but oftentimes they'll work in conjunction with one another. And Coach Caldwell would stand in front of the team, and I mimicked that when I was at Central Michigan. And then anytime something like this happened, he would go through these things and check them off. And they were, being out after 1 a.m., are drugs and alcohol involved? unlicensed guns, driving too fast, women that you don't know, or in some cases, maybe you know them too well. And then the last one is being uncooperative with law enforcement. And it was just to remind the guys that, there's a price for the decisions that you make. In this case, man, it really wasn't them. They had a designated driver, but you could check one of those off. They're out after 1 a.m., not doing anything wrong, but somebody else was. The person that was driving that other car, drugs and alcohol were involved. They were out after 1 a.m. And it's just it's a tragedy. You wish it could make it go away. Hopefully there'll come a day when we don't have to talk about these things anymore, but I don't see that happening anytime really soon.
Well, Coach, all I can tell you, my friend, is welcome to the media, pal. Yeah, because unfortunately, when we have to deal with news, the good, the bad, and the ugly, sometimes the ugly is part of what we have to do, whether we really like it or not. It's the nature of the industry that we're all a part of. So with that said, I'll turn over to Mel.
Yeah, this topic is worth the conversation. This is unfortunate.
All right.
And anytime something like this comes across my phone, much as you hate to see it, I want to know what happened. Because this is one of those things. Obviously, death is inevitable. None of us are going to be able to run from it. But for some kids being so young, just lives just truly starting, it's heartbreaking for me to see this happen to some young kids who are just just beginning to live life. And and Travis knows, when you're young and dumb and you think you're 10 foot tall and bulletproof and rules really don't apply to you, that doesn't happen to me. That happens to the other guy. And we've all probably done some things and been in some areas that we shouldn't have been in, been out at certain times that we shouldn't have been out. And it's by no other reason than God's grace that all of us are still here today. And unfortunately, these young men, they perished. And their heart goes out to their families, to their parents. That has to be the worst phone call or worst knock at your door that you could ever imagine having. And I just pray to God that I never have to experience that. People used to always say, talk about being out late. They used to say nothing open after 12 but Waffle House and legs. And,
I like that. I'm glad you found a way to add a little something to it.
Neither one of those are, when you got, I got 5 daughters. It's not a good situation. So they always had to be in before midnight.
Yeah, Mel, I tell you, up in the Atlanta area, you definitely have a ton of Waffle Houses up there. The only thing I'm going to say,
they only have a key for them. They're always open.
Oh, I know. I'm telling you, and there's a lot more of them up there. It seems like they're on every exit every time I've driven up 75. The only thing I'm going to say about the whole thing is, anything that happens between 12 and 6 is bad. After 3, it's unfortunate. I have to admit, though, the only time you'll ever see me on the road between 12 and 6 is when I'm driving across the country to get somewhere. And believe it or not, I make sure I am loaded with caffeine, as everybody that knows me on this panel does, including my other half. So you hate to see anything between 12 and 6, but I do travel a lot in the middle of the night. And now I know Candy's waiting to chop at the bit here, because I don't know whether she's going to talk about my driving between 12 and 6, that she'd label me a crazy man because I get stronger as the night goes on. But since you popped in, Candy, go ahead. And by the way, before you do that, though, while that's at the top of my mind, I do want to wish my sister-in-law, Marie Shepik, a happy birthday tonight. And Marie, whether you're listening or not, okay, I hope you have many, many more. Okay, I have a feeling you may have a lot more than me, but it doesn't matter. You deserve them. So happy birthday, Marie. Candy, take it from there. Hope you have many more. Go ahead.
So Mel, I can kind of relate, not that I'm a parent, but I remember back in the day, I was staying with my parents over a holiday weekend, and my brother was out at a party, and we knew he was out. He was out at a big festival that they had, and It was all of a sudden there was a knock at the door, and it was a police officer asking if my brother's car, if we knew where my brother was, that they had found my brother's car, but my brother was not inside it, and it was rolled over upside down in a ditch. And so our immediate thought is, okay, where's my brother? What's going on? And for an hour and a half of life, we did not know whether he was alive, whether he was safe, where he was. So I can kind of relate. Obviously, thank God my brother was okay. He was smart enough, I guess, in his instance, smart enough or dumb enough. He drove when he had been drinking too much, but he got out of the car through the window and walked away, and he didn't call us for an hour and a half. Once he did, we went down to pick him up. We were over an hour away from where he was. My dad immediately took him to the police station because he knew that the police were looking for him. Lucky for him, yes or no, he never got a ticket for driving under the influence because there was too much time that had elapsed. They didn't know with what he was blowing whether he had just had the drinks or if that was an after effect. But he did get a ticket for leaving the scene of a crime or leaving the scene of an accident and stuff like that. But so I can kind of relate how people must feel. And granted, my brother was okay. He didn't have a scratch on, the car was totaled, but he did not have a scratch on his back. But for an hour and a half of our life, we wondered what had happened to him. And it was because we were woken up by a police officer. And there is not a worse feeling, I can tell you.
Yeah, I hope
Well,
I never experience it.
I can tell you one thing about your brother, though. If he doesn't get that audio book done, he's going to wish he was drinking and driving for us. I'm going to tell you that. Just kidding, by the way. But he'll know he needs to finish that audio book because we got some powerful information between this from cover to cover. So, Steve, get it done, brother, or Candy's going to do it. Okay, there you go. That's my rant of the night. All right, with that said, great show. I know we were all over the football map tonight. So with that said, we're not going to worry about parting shots tonight, although Jeremy has his hand up. He's in class. Go ahead.
My one thing about this subject is that phone call is soul sucking, and there's a hole in your heart that is never filled again.
Sure. Okay. Well, I can appreciate that. Again, you know what? Anytime you have stories like this, you have to like them. We're seeing them all too much these days. I get it, but it's part of the industry, and whether we like it or not, whether it's domestic violence or whether it's drinking and driving or just being the innocent individual that's a victim of it, regardless, none of it's good. But it's something that we talk about in the journalism when you go to school, the right to know, okay? It's called the Information Act. And that's one thing I talk about a lot of times when I deal with young students that want advice. It's called the right to know, the Information Act. It doesn't always have to be good, but that's just that's the industry we're in. So any other closing thoughts? Great show. I know we talked about a lot of different things all over the map. We tried to incorporate a little bit of humor, some nuts and bolts, and then unfortunately these two stories. And we'll have enough. And we'll have some new hay next Tuesday night here on Inside the Pigskin. So with that said, as we get ready to wrap up the show, I'm going to let Travis Holmes let everybody know how they can get a hold of you.
So you can find me on all the social medias, Travis D. Holmes, X, Facebook, Twitter, etc., Instagram. You can find my writings covering the Jacksonville Jaguars at bigcatcountry.com. Obviously, you can find me here if you're listening, Inside the Pigskin on Tuesdays. And you can also, if you're interested in the Jacksonville Jaguars podcast, we have the Duval Dive on Fridays at 11 a.m. You can catch our podcast there, and just hit me up on any of the socials. I'm always talking about the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I'm going to also give you some takes around some general football stuff. But again, it was a nice conversation with you guys. Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. We love having you. Again, everybody here is all part of our family, and you guys are all awesome. All right, Coach, go ahead.
Thanks, Scott. You can find me here on Tuesdays most weeks, right here Inside the Pigskin. I'm limited exposure in terms of social media. I'm only on LinkedIn, but that's by choice. I'm a retired coach and don't really want to deal with social media. But great show. Thanks for having me as always. Enjoyed it.
Hey, let me tell you, Coach, I'm still waiting the time. We're going to meet pretty soon after I get through with this last Wisconsin trip for you and I to sit down and discuss the book you've been talking about. I have a feeling you're not going to come up with the outline, so I'm going to have to do it, but I don't care.
I have the outline right here.
Yeah, I know that's. I had that outline in my head for 4 years until I finally put it there. But I'll give you a class on outlining. If I have to do it, I'll do it. I don't care. We're just going to get that thing done, and we're going to make it happen. All right, Mel, go ahead.
Yeah, you can reach me on all social media at Mel Farr Jr. and then follow what we have going on down here in Georgia and also up in Michigan for the youth at melfarsuperstarfoundation.org.
Fantastic.
And by the way, LinkedIn is gold, Coach. If you're going to pick one to be on, that's where I get a ton of my guests anyway, so don't worry about it. It's not like you're a lost puppy with LinkedIn. Nobody's ever a lost puppy there. All right, and although I should get on Jeremy Ballrick, how is your LinkedIn thing progressing?
Slow but sure.
Okay, that's okay. Lisa Man's honest. Okay. Now go ahead, give us the rest of your info.
Well, you can find me right here on the South Florida Tribune channel with Inside the Pigskin occasionally and Fire Up every Thursday night whenever we're doing a show. You can also find me on the SouthFloridaTribune.com where you'll find my writings under the Motor City Tribune heading about the NFL and the Detroit Lions. You can find me on my channel at Kneecap Biting with the Motor City Lions on YouTube. You can also find me on Facebook at Jeremy Ballrick. You can find me on Twitter at Smoking Jeremy B, Instagram Smoking Jeremy B1. You can also find me on Huddle Up Sports Network on Roku and Amazon Fire Stick, where I'm live 9 times a week now. Mondays through Fridays at noon, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 9 p.m., and Sundays at 9 p.m.
Well done. All right. Once again, for all of you miss it, to my sister-in-law, Marie Shepik, happy birthday. Hope you have many more. Candy, take us home. My voice is just about at the end.
If you see the red subscribe button under the two guys that are wearing red, that means you haven't subscribed to our channel. So please subscribe to South Florida Tribune's YouTube channel. Share us, like us, share us with all your friends and family. Anybody that you know that would like sports talk. We talk sports. We talk baseball on Mondays, football on Tuesdays, Wednesday and Thursdays. You just never know what sport we're going to be talking. If you like to listen to podcasts, you can find us iHeartRadio, Google, Apple, you name it. If you want to sponsor or advertise on a show, call Scott 954-304-4941. You can go to our website, www.southfloridatribune.com, where you will find the ratings of both Scott and Jeremy and my pictures. But you can also, there is an online store with merchandise that you can go out and buy for South Florida Tribune or the Motor City Madmouth stuff. You can buy a hat, a sweatshirt, shorts, t-shirt, tank tops right now because, the heat advisory and it's so hot outside. So tank tops, whatever, go get it. Go to our website to buy that. The South Florida Tribune did publish a book late last year. It is called Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders. It is written by none other than Scott, the Motor City Morganroth. The word is written by Icorn. Pictures and stories galore about Scott's dealings with the media and how it's changed over the 40 plus years he's been in the business. It is available Amazon, Kindle, Barnes & Noble, Google, and Apple. If you missed any of what I just said, go back, rewind, watch it over again, or rewind the audio version and listen to it. It's been scrolling along the bottom all night long. Scott, back to you.
All right, one other note I want to mention. I know that the Houston area is being hit hard because of Hurricane Beryl. I want to wish everybody out there to be safe out there, and we're praying that you get through this ordeal. And any other areas that are affected by the storm with Hurricane Beryl, please, we're all praying for you to get through this ordeal as much as you possibly can. So, all we can do. We know in South Florida what we have to do with hurricanes, and we always get hit with a bunch of the brunt of the jokes when they hit, but we're pretty well prepared for it. But a lot of these other areas, unfortunately, take bigger hits. Well, albeit a hurricane's not fun anyways. Although I don't mind the Miami Hurricane, but that's different. But nevertheless, our prayers are out to everybody. So with that said, that concludes this edition of Inside the Pigskin. On behalf of Candy, Jeremy, Melfar Jr., Coach Bono, who, by the way, is grimming like I've never seen when we talk about the online store because he had a lot to do with it. Then again, he had everything to do with it. And Travis Owens, thank you very much for joining us. And we'll see you next Tuesday at Inside the Pigskin. Have a great week, everybody. And I'll have plenty more hay so that we can chow on it next week. So take care, and we'll have a great week. Bye now.